Last time we learned how to create some shapes. As a quick refresher, we used specific functions to create them. These included circle, rect, fill, stroke, and more. If you want to quickly go over all the different shape functions from last time, you can either check out the presentation file from the last video or go to the P5JS documentation, which has a comprehensive list of all the basic shapes that can be created. In this video, we'll be going over variables and loops, which will make use of what we learned in the last video. So variables store information in the computer, so it can either be used or changed later. This will be really important when we start players and stuff that can move along the screen, because it'll allow us to store like the X and Y position and the speed of all these moving objects on the screen. But for now, we're only going to be using the setup function, so we'll be using them in a slightly different way that we'll go over in a second. We can categorize each variable by giving each a different name, and there's also a bunch of different types of variables that we should go over quickly. Some of them are integers, floats, booleans, and string. So an integer stores a whole number, a float stores a number that can contain decimals, a boolean is either true or false, and a string is text. There are a lot more variables, but for now, we'll just be focusing in on these 4 types since these are going to be the most common for our purposes. Right. So we can make a variable by using the term var, var, and then after that we have the name of the variable, an equal sign, and then the value of it. So we have a variable called cookies and it's set to a value of 5. We then subtract 2 from cookies by doing minus equals 2. Minus equals is short for cookies is equal to cookies minus 2. It's the same thing except it's shorter to write. The same thing is done except with an addition sign in order to add 12. And then if we were to access this variable later, we would have a value of 15 cookies. Before we go over to the code, it would be helpful to know how we can display some text on the screen. That way we can easily see the value of all of our variables. We can do that using text size and text. So text here is going to have, so text size here is going to choose like the size of the text. We can just put any number in here to set that. And then for text, we're going to take in the text we want to do, and then the X and Y position of the, and then for text, that's going to be how we actually make it. So it's going to take in a string called text, and then it's going to have an X and Y position on the screen. So over to coding, let's just try making a few variables and modify them a little bit. So first thing I'm going to do is create a canvas so we can see the screen, make it 400 by 400. And I think I want to keep track of the number of homework assignments. So I'm going to do homework assignments like so, set that equal to 5. Right, and this is going to create an integer called homework assignments, and it's going to be equal to 5. And then let's say I also want to store a string. So this string will just say like, oh, I have to do this many assignments, right? So we do var hw start. So hw start is a name, and then we'll set that equal to I have to do, and put a space at the end, and semicolon. And I'm using quotations here since it's a string. If you don't do that, then JavaScript doesn't actually know what you're putting in there, since it thinks the letter is like another variable, which it isn't. So we just have to specifically tell it what we want it to do. And then after this, let's say I complete one of my assignments. So I'm going to get rid of one of them. So I'm going to do homework assignments minus, and that's the same thing as doing homework assignments equals homework assignments minus 1. And then I'm going to display it on the screen by doing first setting the text size to 20. And then I'm going to make some text. I wanted to combine both the homework start and homework assignments. So we're going to do hw start. We're then going to use the plus sign. So what that's going to do is it's going to combine both things together, both variables together into one, so we can show it up on the screen. And then I'm going to add a little bit extra. So this wasn't set as a variable, but what you can do is you can also put quotes in and add some extra text. So I'm just going to do this. And then we're going to have the position on the screen. I'm going to set it to an X position of 50, or of 0, and a Y position of 50. Then if we save it and try running it, see, I have to do 4 homework assignments. And then if you were to go and be like, I want to add a few more, do plus equals 5, you have to do 9. And then if you were to just do equals, you would only have 5. So I hope that made sense to you. If it doesn't, make sure to leave a comment below. We'll be using variables a lot in the future, so it's really important that you understand that concept. The next part we're going to be going over are loops. So what loops do is they repeat a section of code until a specific condition is met. This means you can use them to create multiple copies of the same shape or repeatedly check the same information for something new. In fact, the draw method, which we'll be using in the near future, is a loop. One important thing to keep in mind is that there must be a way to exit the loop. If there isn't, the loop will continue running until the game crashes or freezes, So the one type of loop we're going to be going over how to make are for loops. So for loops work by giving it a condition to check behind. And in this case, we're creating a variable called I. We're setting that equal to 0. And then we're going to check, okay, is that value variable of I less than 10? If it's not, well, we're going to increase I by 1 and then do whatever is inside the brackets. Right? And then once I equals 10, the loop will be completed, and then it'll stop running and just run whatever's underneath or the next part of the code in the sequence. This might be a little confusing, so let's go over an example just to see how it works. So let's say you wanted to create a few clouds on the screen. So instead of creating 50 clouds all by yourself, you want to make a function that'll automatically create those. So you only have to make it once, and then you'll have it show up as many times as you need. That's one thing we can use loops for. So we're going to start by creating a canvas. And just like before, this is going to be 400 by 400. Doesn't really matter, actually, because I have the option. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so you can see a few more clouds. It doesn't really matter what you put here, but since I'm going to be making clouds, I'm going to make it a blue color. And I want to get rid of all of the outlines, so I'll do no stroke. And I want my clouds to be, so I'm going to make the fill 255. Okay, so here's going to be where we create the for loop. It's going to be for, and then inside parentheses is what we're checking. So I want to make a variable called I, set that equal to 0. And I want to create 10 clouds, so I'm going to do I is less than 10, and then I'm going to put a I++. So every time it loops through, I increase it by 1. I'm going to put some brackets, and here we can make our code for the cloud. So my cloud will have 3 different parts. It'll have the left side, the middle, and the right. So I'll make the first cloud for the left. Right? So remember ellipse with the X position, then Y position, then the size. Well, we're going to do negative 20, so it's to the left a little bit, and then plus 125. So it's going to shift it to the right. And we need that 125 because we're going to then multiply that by I. By doing this, the cloud is going to be, or every subsequent cloud that is made from the loop will be at a new position, so they don't overlap. For now, we can keep our Y position and our size the same, so we don't need to use I in that. We'll just do negative 20 or 140. And immediately we see we have a few circles on the screen. And just as an example here, if I were to get rid of the I, what you would see is that all of our clouds are gone except for the first one, and that's because they're all stacked on top of each other. So for the middle cloud, we'll do 20 plus 125 times I. All these should have the same value, so 125 times I, otherwise you'll be off center and your clouds will just kind of fall apart. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So if we do this again, right, we have another cloud. And if I were to say, well, maybe I want this to be bigger, well then, look at this. Now your clouds are not equal. Some of them have 2 and some of them have 1. We're just going to keep that the same here. And then last one we're going to put in is our center cloud. So we're going to do 125 times I. We don't want any offset here since it's going to be in the center. I'm going to do 160. See, now we got some clouds on the screen. One thing that looks a little bit weird is all these clouds look exactly the same and are spaced so evenly apart they don't look natural. So one thing we can do to fix this is adding some variation using random numbers. So we can add some, we can make a random number by using the random function, and then inside of that we specify a maximum number. This means we can create a random number between 0 and the maximum specified. We can use that to change our clouds' positions and size, so each one is a little bit different. So if we venture back over to the code, we can try adding some random numbers. So we want a random number to be, we want the same random number to be used for each ellipse, so we can't just create a new random every single time. If you do that, then you'll get a bunch of different numbers and nothing will match up. So that means we have to be able to store it. In order to do that, we're going to be using a skill from earlier in the video when we learned about variables. We'll be storing each of these random numbers inside of a variable. Our first one is going to be for our x position, so we'll do random x. It's random, and we'll have a maximum value of 30. Then we'll make one for our Y position, call it 75. And we'll have one more for the size. And then nothing's changed yet since we haven't added that to our ellipses. So let's go do that now. We'll just be putting a plus random x plus random y plus random size, and we'll be doing that for all of them. And then once it's done, you see all of our clouds are now at a slightly different spot, and they're like a slightly different size. This gives a little bit of variation, makes it look a little bit better. And one question you might have, if we're making the random number here, why aren't all of them the same? So since this is inside a loop, our random number is re-rolled every time we rerun it. So that's why we're getting a separate number. If we were to take these variables and put them outside of it, like put them up here, then they would all be at the same spot. And then also if we were to change this to just random 30, even though that's the same as random x, since we're creating it there, instead of using the same number, it's going to be slightly different. That's why you see like this one doesn't really have the left cloud, and this one's a little bit further out. So for this challenge, I want you to use all the skills we learned in this video, so variables, loops, and random numbers, text, and a few other things, in order to either improve upon your last challenge or make a new one. So as you can see here, last time I made a wintry area. So in this time I added some birds using a quad and some random colors. And the random color is made the same way as we saw in the beginning, except the random number is made between 0 and 255. With that, I'll see you next time. This has been Sensei Charles.